Hello, Louisville. Guess who's coming to dinner? Happy Friday. Welcome to Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. It's a busy day. It's been a busy day for me. I got a lot of stuff going on over here. Some good, some not so good. Um, but I wanna just take this time to just to breathe and say I'm glad you're joining us because this is a conversation that we need to have. Some of you might need to hear it. Um, we want to talk. Sometimes we may be talking to you. Sometimes we may be talking about you. But what we're trying to do is find some solutions to what's going on in our neighborhood. And the neighborhood that I'm speaking of is the Chickasaw neighborhood. So I'm going to introduce to some and present to others the president of the Chickasaw Neighborhood Association, my brother, Mr. Donovan Taylor, Esquire. Boom. What's up, my brother?
Everything well. Thanks for having me, Miss Carr.
I'm really glad to have you. Donovan, I haven't really seen you in person since I ran for office, and that's 2012.
Yes.
Man, that's a long time ago, huh?
Yes, it is.
A whole lot has happened. Look, I moved over on 47th Street and then I moved away.
That's all right.
So tell me, what's been going on with you?
Well, for me, not too much. I live still in Chickasaw, still active as a neighborhood leader. Personally, everything's going well. Professionally, I've changed jobs a little bit. I now am the manager of the Plan Room, which is a business accelerator program for our Black and minority construction-owned businesses. Looking
Ah,
to level those businesses
okay.
up and hopefully direct them and get them on some of these development projects that are coming in the West End. As our mayor has announced, we have over $1 billion worth of development coming in the West End. And so I want to make sure that our businesses and community is benefiting and profiting off of those developments that are coming in the community.
And you let me know if they're not,
I will
so
let you.
we can come back up here on here and scream about it.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So I want to talk, Donovan. Like I mentioned, I said I was living down on 47th Street and I moved. And the reason that I moved was I was hearing a lot of gunfire, and my home had a lot of windows around it. And one lunchtime, I was feeding my mother, and I could hear the gunfire, and I'm saying, wow, this is not safe. And I just didn't feel like I could keep my family safe if I stayed there. It was just starting to turn. You could kind of feel the tide turning. What was the things that had happened over in the park with the one little girl being murdered,
Mhm.
killed in the park, and since then somebody else, another one in the park, something happened. So what do you see that's happening in the neighborhood? Is it gangs? Is it social media? Is it a combination of both? Is it some silliness? Is it I'm just trying to see so many people upset with so many people that
I,
they just had to take them out.
we're dealing with a multifaceted problem. We're dealing with, social media. We're dealing with our form of entertainment that we choose to consume ourselves with. We're dealing with a lack of spirituality and faith.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
and we're dealing with just a culture that has went too far left. And we need to really address that. For a long time, for myself, I really got involved in the neighborhood association and really being active in the community when I moved back to Louisville from Chicago, and
Hmm.
strolling through the neighborhood, and I was robbed by gunpoint. by three. Uh, Fortunately, I kind of like that. I chased them down and caught one of them. Uh, I called the police and had him prosecuted. But during the prosecution, I realized, he was only 17, turning 18, and just kind of just made a wrong decision. And they was only able to steal $20 off of me, and so I had the decision of whether I should push for this young man to be fully prosecuted and spend at least 5 years in prison over $20, or could we find a way
To save him.
in juvenile center and be released upon 18? Uh, I was really initially I was concerned of any retaliation, but
Yeah.
just thankfully, I maybe about a year or two later, I ran into the young man at the corner store around the block. And I hear, "Hey, Mr. Taylor," and I turn around and I'm like, "Hey, young man," and staying out of trouble. And he's like, "Yes, sir." And I think we just need to have a better care. And for me, in walking, I saw the banner about the Chickasaw Neighborhood Association, so I got some information, came out, and I just really believe that as working together as neighbors is the most effective way that we can address any issue that we have in our on our homes and on our blocks, and that
Hmm.
involved. I think being involved in the neighborhood association was really effective. Our neighborhood associations in West Louisville had been strong, but many of the members and leaders are elderly and unfortunately are passing off. And so we need some young blood in these organizations to keep that fire going. You know,
Right.
I was able to connect with Chickasaw before it died out because initially majority of our members are over the age of 60. And so
Right.
so we need to definitely and have been doing great work on maintaining and fighting for good things for our neighborhoods. And we just need a new usher of blood and wind to really keep that banner going. For us in Chickasaw, it has been beneficial on working together as a neighborhood group on addressing the vacant properties in the neighborhood. You know,
Yeah.
crime and safety. One of the things that we do if we're dealing with a neighbor who may be causing a problem or be an issue, we work through the neighborhood association to make those address, maybe send a letter to the individual, send a letter to the landlord, and to really make address. And so it's not so confrontation between maybe a neighbor to neighbor, but they're dealing
Right.
and a group of residents that's looking to improve the area, and you just get a better response from that. And I just been through my work in the is been involved in this community work since I began my professional work out of college. So I started off in Chicago. I was the vice president of the Chicago West Side branch NAACP. So we're just heavily involved on the west side of Chicago on community development. And when I came back home, I just want to use some of those same skills and education that I gained and really put back into the community. And I think if we begin out and really, really pressing that vein. Um, it's I know it's hard work. It's volunteer work. So oftentimes I have to remind people that I'm just a volunteer. I don't get paid to do my community work. Uh,
Right. Right.
Taxing, but it's kind of
And
like
we need more volunteers to
yeah,
do community work.
yes, and it's kind of like a ministry to me. It's the way that I get.
Yeah.
It's,
I've always felt your commitment. I've never seen you waver. We may not be in touch, but I keep an eye on your movements. Facebook let you keep up with folks.
yeah,
You mind your business, but at the same time, you might be minding some other folks' business. But some people that are doing things, you're doing some heavy lifting. And um, the commitment that you talk about, Donovan. I mentioned just in our little icebreaker before we came on that there's a word that as a community we need to address again, and that's about being a good citizen. I very seldom hear anybody talk about citizenship, and just like you said, and that means being a good neighbor. That means we worried about the justice system and how they treat blacks, but we have to be willing to sit on juries,
we
instead of trying to dodge the jury process. That used to be a thing, it's not what you want to dodge, because you never know when it's you who needs a juror.
Absolutely, and that's, and you bring up that particular issue, and that's, that's a community wide issue that we need to address, that we have not fully addressed on
Hmm.
the justice system and our
Right.
jury selection and involvement. One of the things, when you had the Brianna case to come about and people pressing for the prosecution of the officers, one of my concern was, well, if we prosecute them, are we going to have a jury that's going to prosecute?
Right.
You know,
Right.
so, and from the, as we look at our system, it's likely not. And so is, and I'm actually involved in a federal case by which by which we had to appeal the case because many of the jurors had some negative
Some biases.
biases against us as a black attorney team. We were
Wow.
called the Cosbys and the Three Ministers, um, and it was so crazy that, and it was freely talked in the jury room about that, is because one of the one of the young ladies was biracial, but they did not know she was biracial, and it's
Ah, and they was running their mouth, huh? Talking like to her like she was one of them.
but and she reported it to the court.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's an issue, and we have to be active. I really feel that I give a lot of respect and honor to Judge Olu Stevens, who made good address of that. I think we kind of dropped the ball on really keeping that fire going on that particular issue. Uh,
Hmm.
we need to reignite that, because and when we talk about reforming our judicial system, the jury system is probably one of the key things that has really hurt us as a black community
Right.
for decades. If we go back in the past.
Right. Because everybody that had a jury, it was not necessarily a jury of their peers.
Right, and then we announced that, and that goes back to citizenship. When we say peers, when they say, I guess oftentimes in courts they mean peers, peers as citizens, not necessarily peers as women, peers as your racial makeup, peers as your socioeconomic makeup. You're a peer because we're all citizens in
A
this nation.
citizen. Yes.
And it goes back to your point of, we have personal responsibility, we have professional responsibility, but I think we oftentimes forget that we live in a democracy, and so therefore
Right.
have a civic responsibility, and that we
And we have a moral responsibility.
absolutely to be involved definitely in our civic affairs that impacts our quality of life.
Yeah.
Laws and policies have direct impact on our quality of life, and that's oftentimes that has been my focus of work, of really policy change that impact, that has the critical impact on our quality of life and our housing and the way we live in our neighborhoods. And so I have a direct fight on having equitable policies that our governments and agencies and community groups follow, that really best represent the needs of the community. And so that has just kind of been my fight. And
It's across the board, Don. There's nothing that does not affect our lives on a daily basis that is um, inadequate, inadequate representation. The policies are not the policies that have us in mind
right,
at all.
and oftentimes they are policy, and we fail to take understanding that oftentimes the policies do not have us in mind because
Hmm.
we did not care to get in.
Participate.
Right, and so it's kind of like almost crazy of us to believe that we should give so much responsibility to another group to always think about our needs, definitely when
Hmm.
we're actively addressing and speaking up to our needs. And so we say, hey, they didn't include us. Well, I didn't think to include you because I didn't know how to include you, and then
Yeah.
come and make yourself to be included. And so oftentimes we have to push in, even if we're not welcome, we have to push in the door. Like for me, myself, in my community work, I push through a lot of doors. I'm here representing myself as a resident and citizen, and as a community member, and what's going on and how to
Right.
make it better.
Right.
and how we make connections and get the word out. And so one of the things I really I make a big effort of things that are community oriented, of really making an effort of trying to share that information out to the community, because oftentimes our leadership and our local groups, they fail because like, hey, no one came out, and like, well, you did a very, very poor effort on really trying to get the word out.
Right.
And we have to do a better job of that, of really making our community more informed about what's going on in the community, so therefore they can maybe spark their interest to get involved. And so
Right.
when I come across information, I try my best to share it, to get people involved in any way, in capacity that they can.
You always let me know if there's something I need to put a word out there for you. I have no problems in putting the word out. But what I want to say in regard to that, as far as the community, and then we talked about the citizenship. I lost my train of thought for a second there. Um, it's that we have to, come together under this one tent. Um, and we were talking about what we need to do together, the things that people need to know that's important in our neighborhoods. And everybody's like, some people say, I don't want to be involved. Well, you don't want to be involved until it affects you.
Absolutely.
So now it's like we need a different approach to that involvement. A lot of times, we have people that see things and don't say anything.
Absolutely.
Okay, but then when something happens to someone in their family, then they want everybody to say something. You can't discriminate like that.
Right.
If you want justice, if you want justice to be served, you want justice to be served all the time,
Absolutely.
not just some of the time when it suits. You can pick and choose. Well, I ain't saying nothing about that. They didn't get me involved. You know, peeking behind the curtains. And knowing exactly what happened, and not being able to expose what happens, but you want your neighborhood to be better. How can your neighborhood be better if you don't speak up? I mean, it's like we want something better for our community, but we're not willing to do anything to make it better.
Yes. And
And that's not everybody.
there's
Let me make that clear. Excuse me, audience. That's not everybody. But it might be a higher percentage of everybody than it is those that volunteer, participate, get involved, go to meetings, you know, um,
engage.
let folks know what's going on in your neighborhood, because a lot of things we have to be proactive.
Mhm. Yes. Yes.
If you know that something's going on in your neighborhood, just y'all need to just keep an eye on this neighborhood, because I had some funny stuff is going on. I see a lot of activity that I haven't seen. They don't have to know your name, your address. You can just tell them what neighborhood you're talking about, because if you want to protect yourself, you have to protect yourself.
Absolutely. And
And like you said, most of the people in the West, and that's one of the things about, you say, the vacant lots and the vacant homes. Most of the people that own the homes in the West, when white flight took place and black folks moved to the West End, uh, most of that generation owned those homes.
yeah, I mean, what we dropped the ball on that, and we did not actively be proactive on that front on the vacant homes, because we it was a process that a pattern that we saw. Many of these homes that were vacant were once owned by someone.
Right,
And what has happened is many of us and our families are not doing good estate planning, drafting wills so properties can be easily transferred to the next individual. To the point that sometimes you have to go and like, who is the best person to leave my property to, and sometimes it may not be a child. So, uh,
right.
you know,
Sometimes it could actually be your church.
right, and oftentimes I think our churches missed the ball because they should have been advising their church members to do wills, and if they don't have anyone to will their property to will it to the church to then be sent out as affordable housing for its members. That's
Right.
something that we missed out on in that vacant property aspect of really doing estate planning. It's not too late. It's something that
No, it's not too late. We can pick that ball up and get busy.
Yes, I've really been talking to many of our Black attorneys in the community about really having workshops of that nature of really, helping it and, just kind of real low cost or people just going online and finding a will, drafting up yourself to sit so you have something that would easily, when you're really making that estate planning to make sure this property oftentimes stay in your family and it's a legacy property that stays on and that can be of benefit to your family. And so, look at it, you here on my block, we have about 20 homes that are vacant that were once occupied, but most of the homes, we have, intellectual flight that has negatively impacted our community greatly.
Yeah.
Many
Yeah.
individuals of my generation, definitely those who went to college and start their professions, had a vow and negative view against Louisville. I'm moving. I'm never coming back. And their parents may pass away, and I'm living well in another city, so I care less about that property. I'm not coming back to Louisville to probate that property.
Speak on it.
It just go up in flames. And so, and that many of our properties in the community have become vacant based on those similar tactics. And so, and then then financially, a lot of people had issues, and then this tax lien issue was really big for a lot of our elderly folks because they were targeted on that vein. And I did a lot of assistance on that left front on trying to help individuals on that front because many people they like, hey, go get a lawyer. Well, if I'm delinquent on my taxes, I likely can't afford to have an attorney
Can
to help
afford a
me
lawyer. Yeah. Yeah.
in my. And so, oftentimes, what I did, I
So,
just
is there any kind of program, Donovan,
no,
that is in place that would help families especially in the West? Because, I know what I wanted to say. I went back and got my thought. I take my privilege on a daily basis, but I may not have taken it today. I said, uh, you go back and have family members to wow, I did it again anyway. But there was a point that I was trying to make as far as coming together and knowing, because we have all these properties, right, that are vacant, and and property values. When I moved to the West, I found I was flabbergasted. You know, I bought a house that if you picked it up and moved it on any other street in any other neighborhood, would have been a $200,000-300,000 house, and how it had been devalued. I I I was so miffed by that. Just think about all those people in the West whose property values have been devalued.
yes,
That's something that also needs to be checked. And they were talking about certain communities, they were raising property taxes. But what about raising property value assessments? Is
yeah,
that such a thing?
yeah. That's such a thing, and then that is a tightrope that people um kind of try to balance because in the sense that I want decent equity in my home, and to have decent equity in my home I need a good value on my home, and
Right,
time increase value increases my equity, and but
right.
battle is increased value also increases my taxes, and so that is the battle that that you have to go with that from. But oftentimes, increased value can be great beneficial to you because whenever I looking to sell my home, I can get a decent profit in
Yeah,
selling my
yeah.
home. So
So that new, what is it? TIF, about the 10 years. You explain that to me?
Yes. Well, hey, I worked on TIFs when I did work back in Chicago and have been advocating for a TIF district for West Louisville since I returned. I
Okay.
thought that it could be a great tool to guide redevelopment in the community. Definitely, if it was community driven, unlike
Okay.
most other TIFs that are not. Uh, what the TIF does is basically it holds back the increase in taxes in an area, and that holdback of that increase in taxes in the area is put in the fund to directly invest back into that area. The West Louisville Opportunity Partnership is designed will be a 30-year TIF in which
Mm-hmm.
property taxes for homeowners will be frozen for that period of 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so that's a benefit of to help homeowners to maintain and stay in their home as property values increase. And so they don't necessarily they get the equity increase, however, they don't get the tax increase. So it
Okay. All right.
protects the
Okay.
value and equity of their home without the tax increase impact. So their taxes,
Okay.
so the value and assessment of their homes may increase over that 30 years. Uh,
Okay. But do our neighbors know that one of the things that causes your property to be devalued is crime in
absolutely,
the neighborhood?
absolutely. Uh,
Okay. So what else besides crime causes our property values to be devalued?
I mean, you have crime, you have other environmental factors. Hey, Chickasaw, we're right next to Rubber Town, so environment.
Location, huh?
Yeah, right. We're located right next to an industrial center, and how
Okay.
exactly if you living next door to you a Fitzline community, living next door to a place that does a lot of pollution, that may have an impact of your home because that kind of determines how attractive that area is for people to move in and live. Uh, so if I'm a young family looking to start a family or have a young family, I may not want to live in a place that has high pollution and
Right.
impact on myself and my children. And so that's why it behooves us, definitely as Chickasaw, the Fish community, to be environmental activists and making sure that the emissions and pollutions at Rubbertown has as minimum effect on us as possible. And so I'm really thankful. We have a great resident in Chickasaw, Ebony Cochran, who leads the REACT group. And she's kind of one of the main champions of our environmental awareness and action in the community. We need more people involved in that. Uh,
There's another group too. The
yes, we have
West Jefferson,
Miss Ardita Gatson with the
Arnita. Yeah.
West Jefferson
I
County.
told her, I said she seemed like she was what's her name? Uh Brakovich.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Movie.
Look, when she talked to me, Donovan, we talked for an hour. I had to cut that interview up into 3 parts
Yes, he's
because girlfriend, I said, well, you are black. What's her first name? Erica Brakovich.
yes,
I said, you're that for us. But the other thing is, so many of our um, older generations have actually suffered from the pollution of Rubbertown.
absolutely,
I've always thought that Rubbertown needed to just pay everybody the true value for their homes in the West End. That's how they could make the West right,
absolutely,
aside from just moving.
absolutely. 'Cause and you were here. Like I had to do some community research because definitely with Rubbertown, and then when they were doing the that biodigester campaign that the community came out against, one of the arguments was that these companies were here before the people were here.
Right.
And then I had to do some research to prove no, 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 no. The people were
Okay.
before the companies were here. In particular, the area about Rubbertown was particularly a black community because since the Civil War because that was an old fort, Civil War fort.
Okay, so you're talking about the other side of Algonquin Parkway,
Yes.
over kind of over towards maybe Ralph Avenue
No, we're talking more like Bell's Lane, between Bell's Lane and Algonquin.
in Algonquin. That whole even up to Cane Run, huh?
I don't know if I wouldn't say up to Cane Run. I would say Bell's
But
Lane.
just right there in that little area. Okay.
Yeah, there was formerly a old Civil War fort. Uh, Fort Langholm. I think that's where Fort Southworth. I think that's where we got Southwick from the projects. It was Fort Southworth, and
Mm-hmm.
during the Civil War, like in many Civil War communities, many of the ex-slaves oftentimes encamped right by the Union camps for protection. And oftentimes after the Civil War, those basically became the blacks remained there, and they became black communities.
Okay.
And so we
Wow.
were there before Rubbertown came.
So that's why they think that hold on. I just had to do something. I'm multitasking. I'm sorry to have to do that to you, but
It's okay.
um there's his phone number. Just call him. Um so we were down there because it was like white flight came and then we moved in and took over, and then we suffered the after effects, or they decided they could just release more emissions because we were there than other folks. Because I don't know if they had those many problems, because the percentage of death from cancer in that community, say from the 50s, let me see, I moved in the West End, I was in fifth grade, sixth grade, 50, um, 58. Maybe I moved to the West End. No, I was in the fifth grade. So maybe I'm 10. So 60s. That's when most of the blacks started coming, because I
Yeah.
was born in Beecher Terrace,
Mm-hmm.
so, um, but from the 60s up until still probably up until now, Donovan, the percentage of blacks that die from cancer, because I mean, people were saying to me that some people had their windows sealed shut because of the pollution.
I mean, you if you remember back, like I'm a young man, but if you remember back in the early '80s and
Yeah, I'm older than you.
the late '90s,
Yeah.
the odor in around that area was super bad.
Yeah.
And that was, and you look at individuals who live so closely. Definitely, the projects were so closely to Rubbertown, getting that basically direct impact. And when you realize how bad it is, when as Louisville is rated, Louisville is itself, and particularly because of Rubbertown, is rated one of the worst polluted areas in the nation.
Look, they told me I came home, I started coughing. And I had, that's because I sing. I'm like, what's going on? I lived in Las Vegas in the desert where people come to get rid of allergies. So they told me, they said, "Oh, you've got allergies. You've got Kentucky crud." I said, "And y'all have a name for
Yes.
it." I mean, that was just. I said, I never. Not saying that I wouldn't have come home, because I came home for my mother, but to come home to find out that this is the worst air in the country, I was like, man, please.
and, and we have the worst air, but talented to have the best air quality control.
The worst air, but the best air quality control. Well, because I think they're on top of it, but I still think the next thing needs to be that uh, they need to make the community whole.
I mean, it's controversial because I think they probably are willing to maybe make some amends with the community, but
Okay.
you don't know how, because for them they don't, they're like the devil in the community. So if I help, and the person like, will people really receive my help with a welcome hand? And so, I've talked with some of the representatives there about sponsoring and being more philanthropic to local community groups, but they're like, no one ever comes to them uh, for.
They don't go and ask the people that need to be
And so,
approached.
right, and so they said that at this time the only community activities that are really supported by Rubbertown is Cane Run Elementary School and the Lake Dreamland Fire Department.
And they've got a business organization over at that church on the corner of Rockford Lane, whatever that church is across the street from the school. When
Okay.
I was running for office, I went to this business meeting, and that's when I found out more about going that they had meetings with the factories. So, wow, it's just so much. But
It, it,
it's still never too late.
but it's so much. But what it does, it gives each individual an opportunity to get involved on whatever skill level and capacity that you want. If you're interested in science and environment, boom,
Hmm.
hey, environmental awareness is your thing. If you're into safety and youth, we need help on all gambits. So wherever you have an interest or expertise, the need is there for you to come on. You definitely welcome you guys to, we're looking to revitalize the Chickasaw Neighborhood Association. We dropped off a little bit, but we're looking to revitalize the neighborhood association. The neighborhood association is always I found it to be a great tool to be engaged in the community and be involved, definitely on various fronts that impact your quality of life. But if you can be more specific, and it doesn't have to be a community group to be involved and have
Right.
positive. Like if you're a professional,
Even the neighborhood watches, that used to be popular.
yes.
Now Westover still has their Miss Lackey still over Westover.
I think Miss Westover still active. I think Miss Lackey has stepped down, but Westover still yes.
Let me call her up and tell her she can't be stepping down.
And I do. I guess I need to make a correction because I also no longer serve as the president of the Chickasaw Neighborhood Federation and haven't been since 2018. See, I'm still active and involved, but
Your reputation still precedes you.
yeah, but our current president now is Amira Granger.
Amira, I need her name so I can talk to Miss Amira Granger.
Yes,
So I'll get all of her information from you, Donovan.
I
So
definitely.
because we don't want to overlook her. He didn't gave you your props. It was my bad. It was my fault. But so Donovan, whatever's going on, whatever I can, we need to just maybe get together one day and chew it up
Yes, we
and
do.
see what we come up with. Because
Absolutely.
just because I don't live down there doesn't mean I'm still not concerned.
Right.
You know
I
what
think.
I'm saying? And that's how everybody needs to be. Because see, some of these landlords need to be held responsible
I,
about the quality of neighborhoods that we are. Are we grooming our neighborhoods? Are the neighborhoods being groomed? I mean, the other day when I grew up on the corner of Cecil and Garland, in where that apartment, well, there
yes.
was two apartment complexes, but I was on the southeast side,
Okay.
okay, and I saw the corner of Cecil and Broadway looked like a war zone where
Deteriorate.
the kid was held up a hostage situation, or they were trying to talk him down.
Right.
And I'm saying, just you just never fathom that in your lifetime, knowing what you grew up in. I
Right.
mean, to walk anywhere in the community was no big deal, and now it's like people are afraid they're being held hostage in their homes.
Right.
That's no way to live.
No, we had a shooting on our block, and You know, only thing it did is just kind of ignited neighbors. Hey, we need to have a block watch. You know, if we want to prevent this type of activity on the block, we have to be more engaged as neighbors and speak out and be actively against it. You know, hey, the shooting happened in the daylight, so we saying not one person got a license plate number or description of the car and didn't share that information.
Nobody saw anything.
But it happened at 7
As the car was taking off in the dust, it
and
was
you
blue. I
and
know it was
on
blue.
the porch.
Look, man, come on, please.
So
Well, Donovan, let's stay in touch, sweetie.
let's stay in touch. I definitely will stay in touch with you because I need you. As I was looking at our score,
Well,
I,
just tell me, cause I don't do a 9 to 5, so I'm a freelancer,
okay,
so I'm available.
awesome,
Okay, so
awesome.
just let me know. I mean, there might be some meetings that, I mean, if it's nothing else but my input,
Yes, yes,
you know, and I think outside the box a little bit,
yes, you do.
so we can go there.
Absolutely.
Well, sweetheart, I thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your efforts and your commitment, and we need more citizens and good neighbors like you. You know. So everybody, this Mr. Donovan Taylor, Esquire. All
Thank
right, sweetie. I'll talk to you soon.
thank you so much, and it was an honor to be here.
Thank you, darling.
Right,
Take care. I'll talk to you.
we
Keep
share.
that. Keep my number.
I got your number. I'm locking it in.
Okay. All right, sweetie. Take care.
Take care too.
All right. All right. That's Mr. Donovan Taylor. I'm going to cut this short today because I have an emergency situation in my family. And I'm going to say it's dinner time somewhere. Bon appetit. Guess who's coming to dinner? Take care. I'll see you Monday.